completely machinima. And now for something completely machinima. And now for something completely machinima.
Hello and welcome to And Now for Something Completely Machinima, the podcast about machinima, virtual production, and related stuff. My name is Phil Rice, and I'm here with my co-hosts, Tracy Harwood and Damien Valentine.
Hello.
Ricky is off this week. We hope to see him join us shortly. So, this week is Tracy's pick. Tracy, tell us about the film that you chose this month.
Sure. This is called Dysfunction, and it's by Iono Allen, and was released last June. So this isn't actually a typical machinima film. I will explain why as we kind of get to this. Suffice to say, I felt this was a rather more unusual sort of Second Life pick. We've seen quite a lot of Second Life shorts over the last few years, but they don't all do what this film is doing particularly well, I think. There's no this kind of, you're watching this. There's no kind of real clear beginning or a clear middle or an end to it, really. It's not an obvious plot. And I think that's partly to do with how this has been made. Instead, what we get is something a little bit more abstract, I think. And I actually think it's really quite an unsettling piece that you're watching. At its core, what you've got is a portrait of a very fractured mind of a central character. I think the title gives it the biggest clue. But actually, what's being alluded to is it feels like some kind of breakdown, not just a physical breakdown though, but a psychological breakdown, an emotional breakdown, and also there's a cognitive breakdown going on in this as well. So it's rather not so much a story about someone experiencing dysfunction, I think, in the way that it's portraying this. But you are very much being made to feel as though you are inside that experience. And that's what I liked about the film. So, headset on, binaural sound thing going on. I think what you're experiencing is really kind of quite interesting. This is made up of fragments of kind of what seem to be disconnected visuals, quite abrupt cuts, moments that don't quite link together in a kind of logical way. And that kind of fragmentation really mirrors how disordered thinking can feel. I don't know if you've ever been kind of overwhelmed or anxious or mentally scattered. I think you'll recognize that the sense of not being able to hold a single clear thread of thought together is exactly what this is trying to portray. And I think it does it really well. And it does it in a very clever way. But there's another real key thing at play here, which is the relationship between sound and image. Everything that you see really is fundamentally supported by sound, and music. but I want to say the dominant thing is really the sound. But even that feels a little bit disconnected and in places conflicting. For example, you kind of hear some things that don't quite match the visual, or the audio creates a kind of tension rather than some sort of clarity. There's, for example, something which you feel sounds like a heartbeat at times, but the imagery is of a ceiling fan, and clearly what you're seeing is somebody experiencing the heat of the room and the cloistering effect of that kind of heat maybe is what you can kind of feel as the intensity in the story that's being told. Really cleverly portrays that. I think I think that's overall that sound design really is what makes it feel quite uneasy, because it's telling your brain something that you're not really quite seeing, I think. So to me, this story is all about symbolism, and you get lots of kind of impressions through what you're seeing, lots of different types of textures, lots of fleeting images. Some of it, you're ultimately not too sure whether it's kind of drug induced or dream state, or quite what it is that you're you're actually witnessing, I think. One thing's for sure though, what you are witnessing is mental overload. And it's that chaotic um sort of imagery really that kind of portrays that. Even to the state where you could be witnessing maybe emotional paralysis, and the inability to act or communicate or connect with anything in some meaningful way. Really, those vibes, I think, come through incredibly strongly. Um, you're not really entirely sure. I think there's a lot of ambiguity about it, but there's not because you're not really entirely sure exactly what it is you're seeing, I think. One thing is certain with it is that you cannot watch it passively. It's one of those sort of shorts that makes you want to interpret what's going on. Now, this was filmed, this is where I think it's worth reflecting on how it's done, how Iono has done this. It's filmed obviously in Second Life. That environment isn't actually Iono's. This is a story that's told across three sort of landscapes in that environment, which I think is kind of interesting because there's a sense of complementarity through the locations that you're seeing. Now, they're worth mentioning. One is a location called Murmuration, and that's been built by Layli Sorbet and Chris, who, if you recall, we reviewed their Flowers of Evil some time ago. Another is called Natimul by Keiju Koimi and Saskia Reiko. And the third is Life, by a creator called Saba Zergar at Artsville. Now, Murmuration is one where well, I mean, it conveys a sense of a murmuration, which is the idea of a flock of something becoming an intense audiovisual experience. And it's in that space, what you're seeing is a kind of a flowing movement and sound and that kind of collective identity and emergent patterns that kind of flow through it. Natimul is a kind of interactive, ever-changing virtual art project that uses space visuals and mood to create these kind of abstract story-like experiences that you kind of explore rather than watch. And Life is an immersive digital art installation that explores kind of personal experiences. And I think all of these locations and what Iono is trying to convey through the story work together as a collective, really. It's not about here's what this location looks like. It's a sort of story woven with all of these three spaces stitched together through meaning. And the title of this, Dysfunction, really kind of reflects the narrative arc across all of these worlds, which I think is incredibly clever to have attempted to do something like this. The other thing that intrigued me about it was the kind of Americanized character that you see, which frankly isn't at all what you would expect in association with these kinds of environments. It's it sits at odds to it really. And I don't know if you noticed when you were watching it, there's also a French newspaper lying on the floor near the avatar as it's sort of laying
Very
on
particular French newspaper.
a very
Yes.
particular French newspaper. In fact, it's a French socialist newspaper that was of its time, late 1800s actually, which is all about championing the working class. And I mean, the imagery kind of portrayed that, but the time scale being portrayed wasn't of that period. It was more, I would say, 30s, 40s. I'm going by the phone in the room. So I don't know. There's dysfunction going on at a lot of different levels. But anyway, I was super impressed with it. I was super impressed with the way it was stitched together, the kind of arc through it. It raised a lot of interesting thoughts as I was watching it. I thought it was impressive. But maybe you took different things from it.
Well, you started off with the explanation saying it was unsettling. That's actually the first word I've got written on my notes.
Right, right.
So yes, it was a very unsettling film to watch, and of course it's meant to be. Um, you kind of got this contrast of I'm going to call it the real world, the black and white footage, which I think is a nice way to do that 'cause it's kind of dark and moody. And this person is obviously not in a good place mentally and probably not physically either. Um, you don't really get an explanation of what the problem is, if it's a mental thing or if they're suffering from substance abuse or something else. It's not really explored. It's more about what they're experiencing. And then you've got all the color shots, which are the imaginary world, whether it's um, caused by, again, substance abuse or a mental breakdown. It's not really talked about that much, but obviously this color world, these color imaginations are a happier place for this person. And it kind of goes back to the black and white footage, and um, it kind of shows that this person is really haunted by something. Um, there was a shot that I was really impressed by because there'd be an easy way to do it, and then there's the hard way to do it, and this director chose the hard way to do it. As at one point during one of the black and white scenes, the character is looking in a mirror and seeing the reflection of themselves back. And at one point, it changes to a different face. But the easy way to do it would have been to have the mirror on the wall and then just have a static texture of the character's face. And for a moment, I thought, did they do that? And then it blinked and then moved slightly. I thought, okay, you've gone to the trouble of making the reflection animated, which it's not that difficult, but the texture option is a lot easier. Um, and then, I think I don't know why that stood out to me. It's just because it's the technique of making that isn't necessarily a huge part of the film, but it's just the attention to detail to do that.
Yeah.
I was really impressed by that. And yeah, it's the character blinking and they kind of move just slightly. And then when it switches to the other character, you get more of a full frame shot of them and they're moving as well. But when it's just pulled back and you just see the face, it's been so easy to not have them animated. But, I like attention to detail, especially when it's not necessary. But when you do it anyway, it adds a lot. Um,
Mm.
so yeah, I found this a very unsettling film. It's kind of, thankfully, it's not something I've had too much experience with, like hallucinations and um, mental breakdowns and stuff like that. So I can't really relate to it, and that's obviously a good thing. But this film kind of gives you an idea of what it must be like
Mm.
to go through something very difficult. So I am not going to ask anyone who has gone through that if it is accurate or not, because I don't want to traumatize anyone. But I imagine that um, from what my understanding is, it would be a fairly accurate portrayal. And I have to say, I hope it's not something the director is struggling with themselves, because it's obviously not a pleasant situation to be in.
Phil, what did you think?
All right. Well, yeah, I had a very different experience with this film. So, first of all, I just want to say, and I'm going to say this as carefully as I can, it's really nice to see a Second Life film that isn't about Second Life,
Yeah.
Hmm.
you know? And that, look, I'm not trying to trash the body of work. There's some amazing stuff that's been made, but the tendency of Second Life is like the tendency of most video game machinima, which is to be inward focused. So most Halo machinima is about Halo. It's not something else. It's not just a tool that's being used to tell some other story. There are exceptions, of course, but most of it's that. Most other game machinima is that way. And most Second Life films tend to be about either, like you
Mm.
mentioned, Tracy, showing off a beautiful location in Second Life as a thing, or if there's a story, it tends to be something about the experience of the virtual self and in relation to the real self and all of
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
And that's fine. This, if someone didn't know the visual aesthetic of Second Life, they wouldn't know it was made with Second Life. Like
Correct.
it
Yeah.
wasn't used in that way. It was used purely as a palette, as a tool to do this. Whether that was the intent or not, that is the outcome of this. Is it's not a Second Life film. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
It does. Yeah.
yeah,
And I appreciate that because I've long felt that Second Life as a tool is just has still has incredible potential even today, Um, and some of the shots in this, I'm like Damien. I tend to watch this stuff and can't help but think, how would I do that? Or how did they do that? Or how would I do that? And some of these shots, it's like it was really hard for me to remind myself and convince myself that was probably not compositing. That was just filmed in one, because Second Life has the ability to do these
Yeah.
particle and visual effects that are quite challenging to pull off in other platforms. I mean, you can do it in Blender, but it's a lot more work. These installations, these art installations that make use of those things, like Fleur de Mal and like one of the
Yeah.
ones here, yeah, it's quite incredible what they can pull off. So the sound and music were extremely effective. They were very, very good. I think where my view of this differs is I saw I saw a narrative like
Mm.
really clear. I mean, not that there weren't abstraction. There was a lot of use of abstraction, but as I watched it, I thought this isn't as ambiguous as I originally was thinking. There's some concrete elements that just kind of lift it out. Now, whether or not this is something that I brought to the film, or whether or not it's what's in there, that's the age-old question, right? But here's what I
Mm.
saw. So
Hmm.
the black and white is reality. Think the Matrix, right? Where when Neo wakes up in the real world, it has a totally different look. It's a different color color correction used, and etc. You know it's the real world because it just looks different. And black and white's the real world. All that other stuff, in color, was the uh, euphoria, substance abuse based euphoria, and there's vial of heroin and a syringe that it like lingers on quite a long time to,
Mm.
in the black and white world. Um, that's, I think that's what we're experiencing there in those worlds. And I wouldn't call it a happy place. Yes, it's brighter and it's beautiful, but I think it's just euphoria. I don't think that the character is finding what we would call happiness there. It's an escape. And so then the question arises, well, escape from what? And I think that newspaper, it's called The Cry of the People in English. I don't think I
Yeah.
could do the pronunciation justice I don't know how to say
People.
Le Cri de, yeah, I don't know how to say that last word. I'm not going to butcher it.
People.
But it's the cry of the people. And yeah,
Yeah.
it is a publication. It's of course a defunct one, but I think it's in there as to be symbolic of uh, revolutionary endeavors and ideals, which that newspaper may not be around anymore, but revolutionary ideals and aspirations certainly are. Um, and I think that we're in an era where if someone is on the left and has revolutionary tendencies, let's say, they're probably frustrated. There's times when it doesn't seem like the world is going to do what we want it to, right? And it's very frustrating. And the temptation uh, before anyone with revolutionary ideals is when does this ever get to a point, and if so, when does it get to a point where I'm willing to entertain the idea of violence for revolution, which is an ugly thing. It's a horrible thing, right? But
Mm.
it's sometimes revolutions go that way. And often it's out of just increased frustration and feeling impotent, feeling like words aren't working enough. And so maybe I'm reading too much into it, but just, I think of, because I'm not really I don't really lie on the left, right? I have sympathies, but I'm not there. But I know a lot of people on the left, a lot.
Yeah.
And, you know, being on the left in the era of certain world leaders that we won't name, as a frustrating and sometimes desperate feeling experience of just, where's the revolution, man? What's going on? It seems like we were headed the wrong way. So I don't know. I really that just leaped out to me as just this is again, this is my interpretation. I'm not claiming to know what the filmmaker meant, but the narrative that leaped out to me is this is why the protagonist is using the drugs, is trying to escape because he's disillusioned and disappointed with these revolutionary ideals and the world is not going along with it. And so then now we take into the coda of the film. We're back in the black and white world now, but there starts to be some seemingly surreal elements. We're getting some symbolic representation of what's going on in the protagonist's mind. And the protagonist is reflecting on oneself after having a moment of staring into the sun. Very vivid imagery associated with that, what that means when someone does that, right? And now he's looking into the mirror and there's this dark alter ego shadow self that Freud and the like would say we all have, right? And it's there and it's winking at us and you know, and there's this temptation to do you fight it or do you give into it? And I think at the end of the film, the protagonist gives into it. And that's why the mirror changes. And then basically the next scene we see is just that alter ego with the hat swinging what we presume is a knife or something, kind of Jack the Ripper style. And then the only color that we see is the blood splatter,
Mm.
the embrace of violence. That basically what I've been doing or what we've been doing isn't working, and I don't think that the filmmaker is saying that's what you should do, and I don't necessarily think the filmmaker is saying that's what I did do. But I do think they're saying that's what that looks like. That's the choice here. And it's not pretty, and it's kind of scary, and it involves surrender to a darker version of myself that would be capable of doing things that my current self finds abhorrent. You know. Now, has Phil been watching too much David Lynch lately? I don't know, because this is basically this is a narrative idea that is explored heavily in the show Twin Peaks. In Twin Peaks, the evil is actually a separate presence, and they call it Bob, and it can inhabit a person, but they have to kind of give into it and let it in, and then they become capable of doing horrible things that the original self wouldn't. So David Lynch wasn't the first to come up with that idea either. You know, this is a really, since the rise of the psychoanalysts, this has been something that has been talked about in those terms. I think the idea of a darker version of oneself is way older than that, right? It's just talked about differently. The language is used differently, but I'm sure that it wouldn't take us any time at all to come up with some literary references to that. Jekyll and Hyde is the obvious one that's almost on the nose, right? But it's because Jekyll and Hyde is just, I think, just it's actually the concrete story of the drinking the potion and changing or whatever. That's the metaphor.
Yes.
The real story is we both have these things, or this person has both these guys inside them, and they have a choice of whether or not to give into that or not. And when they do, bad things happen. I think anyone that struggles with alcohol, I think that's a context of understanding that, certainly with other types of drugs as well, but just generally too. And yeah, and the way that we tend to categorize that is anyone who has given into that is classified as a criminal or insane or both, right? And Foucault deals a lot with this. There's a book called Madness and Civilization that talks about our tendency in the 20th century to just sequester those people because they're different and they're strange, and so let's just get them out of our sight and put them in these buildings they can't get out of, you know. Which, okay, criticize that, but I mean, what are we going to do? Nobody wants to just walk around and be randomly slashed by some wacko. So it's a problem that civilization doesn't know how to solve at scale, but it's one that we contend with individually. I think that's what this film is about. I think that's what it's about. Yeah.
I hadn't considered any of that. But as you've been talking, there was something else. Tracy, you were talking about the era that it's set, and you were talking about like the 40s.
I struggled with that too. Yeah, I struggled with that too, of that anachronism, that seeming anachronism of that paper.
Yeah.
But I think it's because, I mean, that if you think about the time when that paper was when the core principles of the modern left really emerged. I mean, that's Marx. That's that time, right? Where that was when it was thought to be at its arguably purest. I mean, I'm not a fan of Marx at all, but look, that is what that's looked at like, as it was talked about as these ideals and the stuff that's in the manifesto. It's like, yeah, this is actually possible to do this on Earth. We could do this, you know. But my personal take on it is it's utopian fantasy, just another type of utopian fantasy, but it's believed in. It's like it's a thing. And you look at nowadays and it's like, well, we haven't got there. Why not? We just haven't tried it the right way, or whatever the arguments are, right? But there's a lot of frustration with someone who believes those ideals and sees what this world has become. And it seems like capitalism is winning the arm wrestling contest, like big time. And maybe that's not a good thing, like it's capitalism isn't all angelic either. So I don't know. That's just what leaped out to me. And I don't know anything about the filmmakers political leanings at all. I don't know them personally. I don't know, and I don't presume to know.
Mm.
Well,
Maybe
I was
this
gonna.
means something else, but it just that newspaper really is what made it okay. This may be political, and I don't mean political like
Yeah, 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 yeah.
elections and all that. I'm talking about these ideas of, the world has basically two main sets of ideas of how to address the world's problems. They have for many, many, many centuries. It kind of bisects pretty neatly into two groups of ideas. Neither one of them have all the answers, you know? It's
Well,
almost like those two sets of ideas being held in stasis are really what holds it together. And anytime it tips the balance in one or the other direction, bad stuff happens. Look at the 20th century. That's what that story is.
Yeah.
So, but on both sides, there are people who look at these ideals and can't reconcile them with what they're seeing in the world, and it gets frustrating, right? And at some point, sometimes someone can reach a breaking point and they try to hide from it, they try to escape from it, but ultimately, you know what, it'd just be easier to just give in to this and surrender to it. And then this dark person comes out and slashes. Oh,
well,
it's wonderful. This is my favorite film of the year by far.
well, I'm going
Wonderful,
to add another
wonderful
layer
film.
to it, which is probably there's nothing in the film that would suggest this other than the look of the technology, which may just be a coincidence because that's the objects available in Second Life to create this environment. But if it was set in the 1940s and you've got this French newspaper, which at the time would be an old document, but if the film was also set in France during the early 1940s,
Hmm.
that person is going to
Great
be going
tie-in.
through an even worse experience because they're going to see what's
What do
going
you
on out the
think they
window.
pulled out? The French Revolution pulled that out. Yeah, and it was this sense of this hard far right oppressive force is coming at us, and yeah, that's absolutely the conversations that were going on.
Yeah.
And I think they do today too.
Yeah.
I think that it gets called back to that. So yeah, yeah, I didn't place it specifically in the 40s, but I think that there's a good case for that. I think the
Well,
style of the medicine bottle label was a
yeah.
giveaway. And
And the phone and the bed
and
style
yeah,
and
yeah,
the
yeah,
clothing.
absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah.
it makes sense. So yeah, this is one of the best things I've watched all year, and
Yeah.
it's just really thought provoking. Yeah.
Very, yes. But I mean, I'm really impressed with how you read into that. I did not read
Yeah,
that
neither did
into it
I.
at all. I mean, I started to look at the newspaper and then started to get a little bit purist about it, but I completely missed some of the cues that you picked up, and I'm certain you've nailed it, Phil. That's yeah. I was trying to go down the route of all the different environments that have been stitched together through this, and the way that that's being done as a creative practice as well.
You may be
Um,
right, but I
I'm
got the
sure you're right
feeling
as well. I'm sure
that those were selected because they
yeah.
matched what the filmmaker wanted to achieve visually and for no other reason.
Well, I'd love to hear what Iona has to say about
Oh, me
it.
too.
Oh,
Iona
it's,
goes by in the credits on the film. Iona references another name that we're familiar with. Did you notice that?
I didn't.
Tutsi.
Oh,
Tutsi Neferat. I think that Iono is actually a
former colleague.
additional no,
Well,
a pseudonym. I
no.
think that I mean it. Let me pull it up
Yeah, I noticed that too, actually.
because it's right on the same line, right next to the Iono Allen uh, mention. I
Oh,
can't remember exactly how it worded it. Let me find
well,
it.
if it
We'll
is,
we'll edit
then
this out.
I don't think it can be because Tootsie passed away long before this was made, if
Come
you
on,
remember.
ads. We'll edit this part out. Don't worry.
But certainly I've
The
seen
Iona
Iona
Stones.
Allen's name and Tootsie's.
Yeah. Okay. It says Abasil. Do we know what Abasil means?
In memory? Is it in loving memory?
For. Okay, so
Ah,
maybe it's a
Or
dedication.
that
possibly.
that
Yes.
Abasil, aka Tutsi Nevarata.
Yeah.
So if
In
that's
in memory of, I would think.
right, okay, okay, got it.
which could make sense because I mean, Tootsie was
It was
Freud.
confusing to me because I knew that, yeah, that Tootsie had passed away
Yeah, yeah,
a
yeah,
ways
yeah.
back. So, okay, that makes much more sense. And I think Iono was they're not new
No, no,
to this craft at all. I've seen their work before, so
yeah. But this to me was by far one of the most interesting
it's
pieces.
extraordinary.
Yeah,
It's an
yeah,
extraordinary piece in any engine. Like it's really delightful.
mm,
It's impressive that it was pulled off in Second Life, but I don't think that that's what really made the difference for me. It's just
Yeah.
some really, really extraordinary filmmaking.
yeah, yeah.
It's funny you mentioned that film because I was watching it thinking, I know this is a Second Life film, but I wasn't thinking all the way through, this is a Second Life film. It's like
Right.
you recognize it instantly as soon as you see it because it's just you recognize the style, but that was it. I didn't think
The
about
only
it
other
after that.
person who's made me feel that way with their Second Life work was Lainey Voom.
Yes.
She's not the only one doing it, but that's just the one, that's who comes to mind is her work. There were elements of it because I knew Second Life, I could spot, oh, that was made in Second Life. But then it's like, that's as long as it matters,
Mm.
is that brief second where you realize, or maybe you knew going in, I don't know if I ever go into a Machinima film not even accidentally already knowing what it was made with. And I knew that she made stuff in Second Life, but you'd watch her stuff and it's just like, it
Yeah,
doesn't matter.
yeah,
It's a totally different use of it. She's used it as a tool, as a filmmaking tool. And Iono Allen did the same thing here. It's just wonderful, wonderful achievement.
yeah. Marvelous.
Yeah.
I think Ricky would have
I
enjoyed this one as well,
Ricky would
actually.
have really enjoyed this. Yeah, we'll make sure that he watches this and
Mm,
maybe he'll have something to say about it later. So, well,
brilliant.
audience, what did you think? Is this a beautiful abstraction or some coded story, or is Phil nuts? What's going on? Let
It
us
is.
know. Let us know in the comments what you think, or if anything else jumped out to you about this film. Or leave us drop us an email at talk@completelymachinima.com. So my name's Phil Rice, and on behalf of my co-hosts, Damien Valentine and Tracy Harwood, we hope you will resist your darker selves and tune in with us at the next episode. Take care.
Bye.
Hey.